There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews. I want to welcome you all here. For those of you who are here for the first time, you're going to love this. For those of you who are here for the second, third, or whatever, you already know that you love this show. So here's what I want to tell you guys. Everybody, whether you're new or you're not, I want you to make sure you share this right now and have everyone subscribe to The Productive Podcaster. Make sure you share it out, let everyone know to subscribe and get on with The Productive Podcaster. Now, what is The Productive Podcaster, you ask? Well, if you don't know, now you're going to know. What I do is I put together a podcast to help you, those of you who are out there who want to be podcasters or who are podcasters, but just want a little bit more, maybe to give that little edge or to get a little tip here and there to find out what others do. A lot of people look for a perfection in their podcast. I'm going to tell you, there's no such thing as a cookie cutter podcast. Everyone can do them differently, and they all have their own audiences. So you can do the same thing. So that's what the Productive Podcast is about. So what we're going to do now is start off with a segment I like to call Pros and Cons.
Pros and cons.
Now you're probably wondering, what is pros and cons? Well, pros and cons is where I give you a pro tip on how to be a productive podcaster. Well, today's pro tip on pros and cons is just this: 20 to 45. And you're saying, what is 20 to 45? 20 to 45 is your sweet spot. That's about how long your podcast should be. Now, are there podcasts shorter than that? Of course. Are there podcasts longer than that? Yes, there are. But 20 to 45 minutes are usually where most podcasters find that sweet spot on how long their podcast should be. Now, you're probably asking, well, why shouldn't it be shorter than that? I'm not saying it shouldn't be. I'm saying that this is where you're going to get the most engagement, the most listeners, and you have a better chance of getting sponsors if you don't have a 10-minute podcast. Okay? Now, why shouldn't it be longer? Because let's be honest here. People don't really want to listen to someone talk for 2 hours. They just don't. Not without breaks in between. They'd rather do it when they have it on their schedule to listen to it. So that's why 20 to 45 minutes is your sweet spot. So that is pros and cons for the day on The Productive Podcaster. So what we're going to do right now is take a quick break. And y'all know what I'm going to say. That's right. I have a very special guest for you coming back right after this break. So stay tuned. We'll be back with more of The Productive Podcaster.
You've heard the rumblings. You even thought about starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all of the hard work for you so that you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
All right, guys, welcome back to The Productive Podcast. I always say this, but I'm always right. I can't help it. I have a special guest, and I know you're going to love her. So I'm going to tell you something. Divorce can be a very trying and stressful time, but it doesn't have to be. You can begin anew. Let Shirletta Armstrong and her podcast, The Life Version, take you through this time with a smile on your face. I'm happy that I can bring to the productive podcaster, I can't even get my own name out, none other than Shirletta Armstrong. Shirletta, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Barrett.
Glad to have you. The Life Virgin, I like that name. Now, see, here's one thing I told people in Pros and Cons a couple of weeks ago, and that was that the name of your podcast needs to grab their attention. That gets my attention. So where did you come up with the name The Life Virgin?
Well, after my 24-year marriage ended in divorce, I literally found myself going, what next? And I started referencing myself as a life virgin because I was doing things alone and by myself. And some things I was actually doing for the first time. And so I coined the phrase life virgin, and it just kind of stuck. And I've grown to like that better than saying I'm a divorcee or a divorced woman. Yeah. So it sounds better. And I thought there's somebody else out there that needs to figure out what to do after their marriage has ended. And so let's do a podcast, the Life Virgin Podcast.
I love it. So the business person in me is kicking in right now. So have you branded that?
It is actually a trademark name. It is. It belongs to me. I am the Life Virgin.
I love it. There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So we got all the merchandise coming out and all that stuff. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
Oh, yeah, you got to get that going. You got to get the T-shirts, your hat, all your stuff. And of course, we got to talk about a book. So we got to get that done too. So anyway, oh yeah, see, my mind gets going. Now, the podcast, what made you think, okay, a podcast? What triggered a podcast out of that?
Because I'm not great on social media, and I really find it frustrating to have to create all these beautiful posts or just post in general. I've gotten better at it. However, I'd rather just talk to people. But here's the thing. I don't want to do live video.
Gotcha.
I want to have the freedom to go or just pause, and I can go back and clean that up. But I just don't want to be on video. I don't think I'm very photogenic. And all these people
come on.
All these people I see on IG, they're just you're
a beautiful woman, my dear.
Oh, thank you, sir. But I actually prefer. I think podcast is amazing. I always thought that I should be in communications, and that should have been my major instead of biology. I just always felt that. Yeah, that worked out really well.
Yeah, I should have been biology. I just didn't have a brain. But
I found out very quickly.
Well, side note, I started as an architecture major, kicked my butt royally. But anyway, so I don't even know if you know this, but what you just said a minute ago spoke to so many people, because a lot of people, they struggle with content as far as posting and so forth. And when you're doing a podcast, see, here's the great thing about you and your podcast. We're talking being a divorcee, changing it to a live version, rebranding yourself. A good friend of mine, he always says, renaming it makes it new.
Yes, I like
that. By you doing that, you have also given yourself new content. Because you can take everything that you say on your podcast and turn a snippet into a post. A snippet into a post there. That's awesome. I know I'm giving you some nuggets here. But hold
on, I got my pen.
For those of you who don't know, before we started, she says, I'm going to grab a pen and take some notes. And I'm sitting there saying, you're not going to need that. And she sure is taking notes. But yeah, no, so the thing is, but you're giving yourself content. And one of the things that I learned and I talk to other people about is repurposing your content. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said you don't even know how many people you spoke to when you said that, because a lot of people have that issue. I don't know if I have enough to put out there. But first of all, you're talking about something you love talking about.
Right.
So that makes it easy. You're talking about something you love talking about, and you can talk about that for days. So the thing is, if you can talk about it and you're recording it in your podcast, all you have to do is transcribe it, take a note here, take a note there. Now I'm going to give you a little tip. You can take the notes here, and then I hope everyone's listening here. You can take a note here, take a note there, make that into a post that you write in Facebook, Twitter, whatever. You can also take a snapshot of yourself talking, or take about a snapshot of something that you were talking about. You can grab a picture off of Google or whatever, with that, whatever you said, and make it an Instagram or even a Snapchat or something like that.
Right.
You could, or Pinterest rather. You could also take the video snippet of it, put that on Instagram, put it on Facebook. If you're doing video, or even an audio clip of it. My point is that you can repurpose that same content over and over again. And what it'll do is, so you like that, huh?
You can transcribe the content and make it into an ebook.
You can make it into an ebook or a regular book, depending on how much it is.
Or a regular book. Well, if we stay within the time frame of 20 to 45 minutes, it won't be a regular book.
Oh, that could be. That
Put
could
them
be
all together.
That could be it. Well, here's the thing. That could be a chapter.
Absolutely.
That could be a whole chapter. Just
are quite brilliant.
And see, this is why I'm telling everyone out there. This is why I do this show, because there's so many different ways you can do your podcast, and so many things you can do with your podcast. Mm-hmm. Heck, you could turn your podcast into a movie. It depends on how you want to do things. There's always a creative way you can do things. You just got to surround yourself with the people that can help you. If you don't think that way, if you're a linear thinker, you have to just surround yourself with people who think more abstract, and they can figure out ways to be creative with because here's the thing, what you're doing, Shirletta, you're creating art. You're creating art.
I can't even draw.
What'd you say?
I can't even draw. That's amazing.
You're so funny. She can't even draw. But the thing is, for instance, you don't even realize this, but your podcast is counseling a lot of people who need to hear from someone like you who've been through some of the things that you do. You're an artist. Look, you might not be doing biology, but you're sure filling in as a doctor right now by helping people with their divorcee issues.
I'm trying. I believe it is my duty to serve and help as many people as possible. I don't want anyone to ever feel like I did. I felt unworthy, unloved, and just so many things and so many negative things. And I don't want any person to ever feel like that again, because your marriage ended, but your life didn't. And sadly, sometimes new beginnings and the best beginnings come from sad endings, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Life Virgin podcast is about. Wow, you gotta get to your comeback, get to the other side.
That was good. What you just said, that was so good. That was a nugget right there. I hope you all know that. That was a tweetable. So you
see, I'm not the right. What did I say? I'm not the right.
What did I say? Right. You may get a lot of people contacting you after this, because that was good.
You know, it's just amazing to me that there are so many hurt people walking around, and because I focus mainly, of course, on divorce, but there's just so much trauma that people have experienced, and we carry around so much pain and hurt, and we mask it. And I was good at that, just smiling on the outside and making sure everybody else was okay, but on the inside, I was, the Picasso picture, that was me on the inside. And finally, one day I said, "Hey, you gotta look at yourself. You gotta prioritize yourself." And that's my other big thing: make yourself a priority. And sometimes you gotta say no to people, because part of your self-care and your healing is to take care of yourself and make yourself a priority, because you can't get to the other side if you are just all in pieces and you're, torn and shattered. And how are you going to get whole and get to the other side and get healthy if you're not taking care of yourself, your physical, your mental, your emotional, everything, your spiritual? You just gotta get deep. Being a life virgin, being the life virgin, it's work. It's work. And I want everybody to get to that place where they can be the best life virgin that they can be, because it's such a beautiful place once you start to embrace who you are and rediscover who you are. And you get to that place where you're like, I have joy, I have peace, and life is good. Wow. I'm sorry, just went way off.
No, I love it. That's good. So I want to ask you, when you decided to tell people, hey, I'm going to start a podcast about this, about telling people did you get any people saying, no, you shouldn't do that?
I really didn't. I just finished my second coaching certification, and the only person that said we shouldn't do it, thank you, was our coach. She said, "No, you shouldn't do a podcast." And I was thinking, "Well, yeah, lady, I am going to do a podcast because I'm not." I love her. However, her path is not my path. And one thing we have to understand is that we all have different paths to do things. Mm-hmm. I'm not the IG queen. And now this new thing, Clubhouse, I don't want to master it. I just don't. I just don't. I'm sorry. I want to get on the mic and I want to talk to people and I want to interview people. And I just want to open myself up. I cannot do that through IG or Facebook. And if you can do Facebook, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to be live. So yeah.
I don't want to do lives. And maybe one day I will, but I think this is my thing. This is my jam.
And I asked that question because usually, especially when someone is bearing their soul, like you're really doing in your podcast, there's always some people that say, "Oh no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that." But sometimes it's cathartic. Sometimes it actually helps you in getting through it, and it also helps other people as well. So I think that's why I asked that, because it's something that it comes up for a lot of people when they're gonna start a podcast. Now you're new to podcasting, so you haven't really had any, I should say, production trials and tribulations yet. So get ready. Get ready. They come.
They're coming.
They come. The good thing is you're recording, so it's not live, but there still can be some problems recording as well. So just you haven't had them yet, but they're coming. And I'm excited for the people that are going to get a chance to learn from you. Now, as far as your podcasting, this is something I really want to get people onto, because I really want to hear from you, because a lot of people think that you have to be so perfect when you do everything. I just want to ask you this. Did you go out and buy like brand new equipment for your podcast?
No, I have a MacBook, something or another. My kids gave me a microphone. But the Macs come with all this great software already pre-installed, and that's it. I don't have a stand for my mic, and I don't have a sound card, and that's okay.
Thank you.
So no,
here's the thing. I didn't even know the answer to that question, but I'm saying I didn't know the answer to that question, but I said I got a feeling, because a lot of people think, "Oh, I have to have this, have to all this equipment, have to spend all this money." No, you don't. Yeah. Let's get started.
My thing for this year is to stop operating from a place of fear and to just do it, as Nike says. And so for me, it was like, just do it. I have a sister coach friend who has a podcast, and I was like, "Oh, Anchor FM, this is easy. You just point and click and you put." I said, "Oh, wow, this is easy. I can do it," because I'm not a tech savvy person. Now, I'm no dummy, but I'm just not tech savvy, and that's okay. But it's user friendly, and I overthink things. And so for me, I'm getting away from, well, this might not work. Maybe no one will listen. I don't care. I'm going to put the message out there, and I'm just going to trust and believe that the right people are going to hear it, and then the message is going to get out. So stop trying to be perfect, because we're not.
Yes.
And you never will be.
Right.
And you'll never get there. So just pick up your phone or whatever and hit record and start talking.
Did you hear her say, "Pick up your phone"? That's another thing you don't need to have. Oh God, I tell you, Shirletta, you're talking to so many people. I'm telling you, because a lot of people just think that it has to be this big production thing, and it doesn't. It doesn't have to be all that. So I'm so glad to hear you saying that. And one of the things that you mentioned about not working in fear. A friend of mine, he's been on the show before. He talked about there's a difference between fear and anxiety. Mm-hmm. And what most people feel is anxiety. And the way he put it is this. He said, a fear is a present danger. Okay. So like, I always say it like this. If you walked outside and someone put a gun to your head, you have a fear that they're going to shoot and kill you. Mm-hmm. But if you said, "You know what, I don't want to go outside because someone might put a gun to my head," that's anxiety, because you just made it up.
So I won't operate in fear or anxiety.
Right. And most people work in anxiety. Like you said, what if this happened? What if that happened? It didn't happen. You just made it up. And that's the thing. And people hate hearing that, but most of it we make up in our own mind.
Absolutely.
We make it up, and it hasn't happened. And we stop ourselves from doing so many things because of that.
Yeah, we are our own worst enemy. And I can tell you that
again.
we are our own worst enemy. We don't
Yeah.
need anybody outside to beat us down or tell us the worst, because we can always, for some reason, come. I don't care how positive you are. Sometimes we always come back to that place, and we just beat ourselves up. Like, I should have done that different. I should have.
Yeah, you're right. You are so right on that.
At
So
the
right.
end of the day, who's gonna care
At
if
the
you
end
could
of the
have
day,
done it
who's
a
gonna care?
different way? Did you get what you needed? Are
Right.
your children gonna still love you? Yes. What's your legacy gonna be? Well, she didn't dot that I or cross that.
So Shirletta, please, before we let you go, tell everyone the name of your podcast and where they can find it.
My podcast is the Life Virgin Podcast, and you can find it on Anchor FM, Buzzsprout, and I forgot the others.
But you will remember. So guys, look, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow her. And I know you're saying, well, Barry, we enjoyed her so much. Well, guess what? She ain't going anywhere. She'll be right here because we have one more segment, and Shirletta's going to stick around for us as we come back, and we're going to do podcast and answer so much questions. So stick around. We'll be right back with more of the Productive Podcaster.
You've heard the rumblings. You've even thought of starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all the hard work for you so you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or just go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. I told you she was gonna be great, and you love her. I know you do. I told you would. So Shirletta is still here with us. She is here with us for our segment called PodQuest.
PodQuest.
So we're gonna take a question from an audience member, and she's gonna answer it. I'm gonna give you my answer as well. And the question we have here is from someone. They said, "Do I have to use Apple iTunes for my podcast?" So Shirletta, I'll let you answer that first.
Well, the short answer is no. And I'll tell you why I say no. As much as I love Apple products and I have a lot of them, it is easier to just go to anchor.fm. We should get money from them for this, shouldn't we? Just go to anchor.fm or Buzzsprout and start your podcast. And the great thing is that they'll distribute them to all the podcasting platforms. So you may end up on Apple without even having to do the work. But no, you do not have to be on Apple iPodcasts.
And I agree. Now, here's the thing. I have mine on Apple iTunes, but I have mine on a lot of different platforms. I have it on Google, Stitcher. I have it on Spotify. I have it on TuneIn. I have it on iHeartRadio. I have my podcast in a lot of different places. You don't have to put them on those places. I just do it because it helps me to get more of an audience because, like Shirletta just said, she loves Apple products. There are a lot of people who are only Apple products. So they will only listen to stuff on iTunes. There are some people who don't want to listen to them at all on there. So it's really, it's your choice to do it, but you don't have to do it. And I think you probably asked the question because you think that everybody else is doing it. Everybody is not. Maybe it's just a lot of people but it's up to you to do that. But it's not like I told you before, there's no cookie cutter way to do it. There's so many different ways to run your podcast. So, Shirletta, I want to thank you once again for joining us on the Productive Podcast. And I'm going to give you one more opportunity to tell everybody the name of your podcast and where they can find it.
I am the Life Virgin, and my podcast is the Life Virgin Podcast Show. I'm featured on Anchor.fm and on Buzzsprout, and I think I'm even on Spotify.
All right. Fantastic. Once again, thank you. You know, you're always welcome here, so I appreciate you so much. Shirletta Armstrong here. Check out her podcast, The Life Virgin, guys. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you share it out to everyone else as well. So, guys, it's time for our next segment. It is time for our next segment. And you're probably, Barry, what is the next segment? Well, the next segment of the Productive Podcast, or right after Podcast, is the podcast profile. Well, I find a podcast that I took a particular liking to, and I want to share it with you guys because I think you may like it. This one is called Life Boss, and it's with a guy named Jason Capital. I want you guys to check it out. Life Boss, Jason Capital. Check out his podcast. You may like it, you may not. And some of you are still wondering, after we just did podcast, how can you get your question submitted on the Productive Podcaster? Well, go ahead and join our Facebook group and engage. Join the Facebook group and engage. And you're saying, well, Barrett, what's the Facebook group? It's simple. The Productive Podcaster. Go to our Facebook group and engage. Now, what engage means is not post a link to your podcast. That is not engaging. I mean, talk to people, engage, ask questions, give some tips to people. This is not a promotion site. It's actually a time for you to talk to other podcasters. So go to Productive Podcaster Facebook page and then engage with people. Now, it's time for the podcast giveaway. The giveaway, yes. Today's giveaway is going to Carlton Haycox. You're going to get an audio version of my book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? You're going to get an audio version of Why Didn't You Get It Done? Carlton Haycox, congratulations. And for those of you wondering, how do you get in the giveaway? Well, you can get it the same way. Go to the Facebook group, The Productive Podcaster, and engage, and you may get your name called as well. Now comes time to the part of the show, as we end the show, which is my favorite part. We get to give a productivity quote. And this quote comes from Sunday Adelaja. And it says, people who understand how to convert their time into useful products do not complain about boredom. Ooh, that's a good one. We just talked about that. People who understand how to convert their time into useful products do not complain about boredom. That's a fantastic quote. I like that. So learn to convert your time into useful products. I love that. Now, and then learn to sell it. So guys, that is the end of today's show, The Productive Podcast. I want to thank my guest, Shirletta Armstrong, and her podcast, The Life Virgin. Make sure you subscribe to that, and make sure you guys are sharing the Productive Podcast to everyone out there. We want to have more of you like our show and subscribe to our show and let everyone know about the Productive Podcaster. Before I go, I always like to say one thing to you all. That is, don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to all them all and take action, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Productive Podcaster. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.